Why hydrogen cars will soon take over electric vehicles. What if we told you that you were taught the wrong thing about electric vehicles? Because electric vehicles may not be completely green and sustainable like what most people would like to believe, which is why we think hydrogen vehicles will take over electric vehicles. But how exactly is that going to happen? Well, that's what we discuss in this video. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more tech videos just like this one, and turn on post notifications so that you never miss out on any of our future uploads. With all that done, let's get started. Everybody is concerned about the environment and are looking at alternate ways to power their vehicles because burning of fossil fuels results in a lot of undesirable emissions, which might result in the release of greenhouse gases that will then contribute to global warming, and we don't want that to happen. Tesla is the reason why everybody got excited about electric vehicles, because before Tesla, electric vehicles were considered to be really impractical because of how expensive these cars were, and they provided very little value for the money that you pay. The reason why Tesla's electric vehicles make a lot of sense is because of the supercharger network, and that was completely absent before Tesla, which made electric car ownership a headache. Before people started talking about electric vehicles, everybody thought hydrogen would be that revolutionary fuel for the future vehicles. But the future of hydrogen-powered vehicles is still questionable because we don't get to see any serious developments for this category of vehicles. Car manufacturers have been experimenting with hydrogen fuel cell technology for a long time now, as they clearly want to use this most abundant resource in the universe to power cars. But the progress is really slow compared to what we have with electric vehicles. Right now, the only mainstream hydrogen-powered cars that you could buy would be the Toyota Mirai and Hyundai Nexo. So how exactly does hydrogen cars work? Well, when you put hydrogen in the car from a pump, it is stored in a secure fuel tank just like gasoline vehicles. The hydrogen is then fed into a fuel cell which generates electricity. It uses a lot of chemistry to combine hydrogen and oxygen and then generate electricity. Inside the fuel cell, you will find a liquid with a positively charged anode on one side and a negatively charged cathode of the other. So it acts somewhat like a battery. Inside this fuel cell, hydrogen atoms will split into protons and electrons. The splitting into protons part will give you the exhaust product, which is pure water. And splitting of electrons will provide the power for the electric motors. There are so many smaller reactions happening inside the fuel cell to provide plenty of power for motors. Hydrogen vehicles are also equipped with a battery, which means that you can actually store power if you want to use your hydrogen vehicle like an electric vehicle. However, most of the time, the fuel cell will send power directly to the motors. So why is hydrogen the future fuel for future vehicles? We are all used to topping up our vehicles with fuel, and the same can be done with hydrogen-powered vehicles. Burning fossil fuels result in emissions of greenhouse gases, but with hydrogen fuel cells, the exhaust is going to be just pure water vapor, which makes the perfect fuel in theory for a cleaner future, where we will continue to use our vehicle just like before, but without any impact on the environment. When you look at EVs, the fundamental problem is the charging time and battery degradation. These batteries are not efficient during extreme cold temperatures because batteries require an optimum temperature for it to work efficiently. Toyota is one among the major car manufacturers that believed hydrogen to be the future, and they came up with the very first credible FCVR concept way back in 2011 that developed into the Mirai, which was commercially available from 2015. Even Honda produced a couple of fuel cell vehicles like the Clarity Fuel Cell and FCX Clarity. Hyundai also tried with the Tucson fuel cell. The Mirai from Toyota was offering a range of about 312 miles on a single tank of fuel, while Honda's Clarity fuel cell managed about 366 miles. The other reason why hydrogen-powered cars make a lot of sense is because we depend extensively on lithium-ion batteries, and lithium-ion battery production for electric cars is a very energy-intensive process, and lithium mining generates several tons of carbon dioxide. The entire statement of electric cars being completely green does not make any sense in the real world, unless we switch to sustainable sources of energy like solar or wind. Hydrogen can be produced on site rather than being transported like fuel or supplied through a grid like electricity. which is another reason why we think hydrogen vehicles might be able to replace electric vehicles. But if you think hydrogen is completely green, well, it is only clean when used in your hydrogen car. But to get the liquid hydrogen into fuel stations, it requires a lot of energy, and most of the energy that is produced today comes from fossil fuels, which will then contribute to global warming. But the same is the case with electric cars as well. Most of the energy that is used to charge electric vehicles comes from coal, so electric cars are not so green after all, unlike how Elon Musk wants us to believe. Once the demand for hydrogen vehicles increases, especially when people come to know that hydrogen is a very sustainable fuel, companies will try to bring more hydrogen vehicles. The reason why hydrogen vehicles are still in its development phase today is because of the very little research that goes into producing hydrogen-powered vehicles. Hydrogen is also quite expensive. To put things into perspective, if you want to fully charge an electric vehicle, it might cost about $10 to $15 depending on what car you have. But if you want to have a full tank of hydrogen in a Toyota Mirai, it will cost you about $84, and that is expensive. But these costs will come down if there is huge adoption of hydrogen-based fuel cell vehicles, especially when more people will prefer hydrogen vehicles over electric vehicles. Then we could see a decrease in the charging cost of refueling and you will have more fuel stations. Hydrogen is also extremely flammable, but that is the case with petrol and diesel, and you carry that in your car all the time. Today, we live in a much safer place and vehicle manufacturers conduct a lot of research to keep you safe, which is why the hydrogen-powered cars come with high pressure. The tanks on board are designed to contain extreme pressure, which means the hydrogen cars will not be dangerous and it should be just like any other car out there. Electric cars are equally dangerous as well because there are instances where batteries tend to explode and people die as a result. For sustainable mobility, you cannot ignore the role of hydrogen to be used as a fuel, as this would be a potential alternative for fueling, especially for heavy vehicles. But developing a hydrogen refueling infrastructure might require billions of dollars in investments and a few years to develop the technology. So hydrogen-powered cars might be the sweet spot between gasoline-powered vehicles and plug-in electric vehicles because there is no internal combustion engine inside the car. All you get is a fuel cell that generates electricity using hydrogen, or maybe that's an oversimplification. Hydrogen-powered cars need to be filled up with hydrogen just like how you would do with your gasoline vehicles. Hydrogen vehicles will also make a lot of sense for those people who cover long distances. But the focus of car manufacturers right now is on plug-in battery electric vehicles. But we do have fuel cell cars in development because battery-powered trucks and vans won't make sense. But a hydrogen-powered truck or van will make sense because of the refueling times. Hydrogen is the most common element in the universe, which means that it is definitely not going to run out like petrol or diesel would. Right now, we don't have as many hydrogen cars like we have with electric vehicles. The future of vehicles is very clear. We will be driving around some kind of electric vehicles instead of gasoline vehicles in the very near future. Right now, electric vehicles have a huge demand. But if more research and development goes into hydrogen-based vehicles, you could expect your next car purchase to be a hydrogen vehicle because of all the advantages that these vehicles provide. Maybe in the future, some manufacturer could crack the code for hydrogen-powered cars. And if that happens, the future would be all hydrogen vehicles. Or at least hydrogen cars could coexist with electric vehicles.